few weeks ago, I was introduced to an app called the Yuka app, which allows you to scan different foods and determine how good or bad they are through a rating system, basically ranging from 0 to 100. So today, we're gonna take a couple of household items, as you can see here on the countertop, and run them through the app and see where they rank. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. And before we go any further, please be sure to comment, like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. We're on the road to 500 subscribers. We're very close, so it would be much appreciated if you could do that. So as you can see, we've got our items over here. I'm gonna go ahead and put the screen recording off to the side so that way you can see in real time as I'm scanning these things, my reaction, what I think of the app itself, and we'll kind of just get into the details. Starting off, we'll go ahead and do the olive oil. Now I'm gonna be honest, I have done this before through the app. Overall, let's see what it turns out. So extra virgin olive oil, as you can see on the screen, is a 90 out of 100, which is a great score. That's excellent. There's no additives. It's technically considered a fruit because olives are considered a fruit. And you know, the calories are considered low. I'm assuming that's because it's a fat, but I don't know that I'd agree with that necessarily. It's easy to consume 120 calories of olive oil, especially if you're not tracking it. So if you are using this, be sure to make sure that you're tracking how many grams, milliliters, or whatever it may be as you're cooking. Now that we've done the olive oil, I'm gonna go ahead and attempt to scan this plant butter. I'm not really sure why we have this, unless maybe it was, you know, specific to a recipe Hannah was making or something along those lines. Let's see how it stacks up. Not great. We're looking at 39 out of 100. That's pretty bad. A lot of that seems to be as the result of a lot of additives, but nothing really risky that's gonna cause, you know, any life-altering effects. With that said, we do have it being too caloric, which again is a little surprising. This is lower than the olive oil, so I'm not really sure what the rationale is for that. But there is a high saturated fat ratio, which I guess is relatively reasonable if you're concerned about chemicals and things like that. However, it does show some positives here. This is a pretty cool feature. You know, it looks like it's organic, there's no sugar, so those things are obviously good. It is a little bit high in sodium, but I honestly don't think it's even that terrible from a sodium perspective. It's not great, but it's not terrible. One thing I really like about this app is the fact that you can actually see different recommendations. So if something ranks low, you can replace it with something that's also on the app, and I think that's a really cool feature. All right, now we're gonna do the Oikos Greek yogurt. I eat this every morning. I'm not gonna lie, I've been scanning this for this video. I'm a little bit nervous because I eat it every morning just to see where it ranks up. Don't know why, because I probably won't stop eating it if it's not a great rating, but let's check it out. 84 out of 100, not bad. That means that this has technically got an excellent rating. We're looking at high protein, low calories, no saturated fat, low in sugar, 6 grams isn't terrible, and you know, relatively low in sodium. There is one additive with limited risk, that's stevia, and I'm assuming it's the sweetener for this to make it taste good, basically. But because it's low or limited risk, it's not really a big factor in the score. What a relief. So, good to know that the thing that I've been eating every single morning is essentially still pretty good as far as options go. Speaking of options, I'm assuming that the Diet Dr. Pepper or Dr. Pepper Zero, Coke Zero, whatever it might be, isn't gonna rate well, but let's go ahead and scan it and see what we come up with. Yeah, 41 out of 100. 41's a pretty low score. Not the worst thing that we've had so far though. Surprisingly, it's the plant butter. I probably wouldn't have guessed that. I would have thought it was the Dr. Pepper Zero, but that's just me. And a big part of that, yeah, is, you know, 6 high-risk ingredients, 1 limited risk. Let's go ahead and just see if we can take a look at the additives. I'm gonna be honest with you all, I don't know any of these chemicals really, with the exception of aspartame. Obviously that's the most common one. I think that's technically considered a, yes, category 2 carcinogenic, 2B to be more specific. And here's the honest truth about this is I'll probably still have a Dr. Pepper Zero from time to time. It's not gonna kill you to have them every now and then, and the reality is, even if you're consuming, aspartame or whatever it might be, unless you're over consuming a large amount of aspartame, you might not and likely won't see any negative side effects. I'm not trying to justify it by any means, but that's just a matter of fact. So to counter that, we're gonna do a poppy. You all know that I have one on pretty much every single full day of eating video that I do. Let's go ahead and see how it ranks up. 58 out of 100, not terrible, pretty good. As far as I know, anything over a 50 is considered good, but again, take it with kind of a grain of salt. At the end of the day, it's going to be a matter of how often you're consuming these things. So if you have consumed some of these things, it's probably going to be okay unless you're over consuming them or consuming them daily, regularly, in high doses. It just depends. So let's go ahead and look at why it got such a low rating. It looks like there's one chemical with, one additive I should say, with limited risk. Stevia, not terrible, but it is a little weird that it's a 58 out of 100. I mean, I'd expect it to be a little bit better than that, considering everything else pretty much checks off the boxes. It's low in sugar, low in saturated fat, there's no sodium, and it's pretty low in calories. As a matter of fact, I mean, anything under really like 100 calories for a soda seems to be pretty good, but even on here it says 50, so I don't know about how I feel about that, but the truth is that's a pretty decent rating, and overall, I think replacing Poppy with a Dr. Pepper is probably the best choice. If you're somebody that's really heavily consuming soda or consumes one or more every single day, it's a lower calorie alternative. It's also got less additives, just for your overall health, right? Again, if you're having a Dr. Pepper Zero every now and then, like I do, it's not a big deal. But if you're doing it every single day, it's gonna add up. Let's go ahead and see a couple of other things that I kind of just found sitting around the refrigerator and the pantry, and then we'll go ahead and kind of do a little recap of the app and what I truly think of it. So one thing that I did find inside of our pantry was this mayonnaise. It's Best Foods mayonnaise, and honestly the reason why we got it was because it was the lowest ingredient mayonnaise that we could find. Now I have to say that I'm not like a huge mayonnaise person. We do use it for like the base on the In-N-Out sauce for the burger bowls. But I don't know, I just don't consume it that much. So let's go ahead and see how it tracks out. 15 out of 100, hands down the worst food that we've had so far, and I can't say I'm too surprised, right? It's mayonnaise, it's got one additive, which honestly, not terrible. I would have expected to have more. And it looks like it's moderate risk, so not great, but not terrible, right? When you're looking at the calories, it's 2 caloric, and I would actually agree with that for something like a sauce. You want to have a low calorie sauce for your meals. Things like G. Hughes can be good, or just sugar-free condiments in general typically ends up being the best from a caloric standpoint. As far as the saturated fats go, looks like 1.5 grams of saturated fat. That is relatively high, and there's a lot of sodium, no surprises. Now it does show that there is no sugar inside of this, so that's pretty good considering, it's a condiment, and I feel like some condiments really do have higher sugars. Think your barbecue sauces, right? It happens. Now they do give you a recommendation for Classico mayonnaise, so if you're a mayonnaise person, maybe check that out if, chemicals or just this overall rating doesn't suit what you're looking for. I don't know a whole lot about the brand, but it is still considered a little too caloric, so if you're trying to lose weight, I'd probably try to just stay clear of any kind of mayonnaise, at least until you get to a good place. And last but not least, we've got the Siete lime chips. These are my favorite chips. If you've seen my full days of eating, if I have like tacos or something like that, I usually have some of these on the side, as opposed to like regular Mission tortilla chips. Nothing necessarily wrong with the Mission tortilla chips, to be honest. I think that they're pretty much similar as far as the calories go to these. So if you're trying to be in a calorie deficit, if you can eat these, you can probably eat the Mission tortilla chips, to be fair. With that said, let's go ahead and see how this ranks. 54 out of 100, that's pretty good. Overall, it looks like it's got a decent amount of fiber, especially for chips. That's pretty surprising and kind of good news. 1 gram of protein, which is not substantial, especially whenever you consider the fact that protein it's not all created equal, right? Like there's different amino acid profiles for protein, so I wouldn't go too far into that, right? It's 1 gram. It's only got 1 gram of sugar as well, and 1 gram of saturated fat. There is one additive, but it looks like it is risk-free, so we'll go ahead and just look into that. Citric acid, antioxidant, not sweating it. Now there are some negatives, still a little bit too caloric for this app. Again, if you can make it work, make it work. Like, you know, if you're gonna make protein and throw some protein on top of those chips, maybe a little bit of cheese and make kind of a nacho platter out of it, you'll probably be fine. Then again, that's for a meal, that's not gonna be like a casual snack or something like that, right? Now it does say that it has a bit too much sodium, which overall I think I would actually agree with. 150 milligrams is a little bit up there. It's not terrible, but it's not great. Now that we've gone through a few foods, I do want to kind of go over and recap some of my thoughts on the Yuka app. First things first, we'll go through the positives. In my opinion, it's pretty informative. You're actually getting a real understanding of what foods you're consuming and what is good, what might be a little bit bad, especially from a chemical or an additive standpoint. And it's not just limited to your foods, it's actually, you know, inclusive of shampoos, soaps, different household items for cleaning. And having that insight is pretty neat. It makes the app really addictive, and when I first found out about it, I was kind of just running around scanning random things. And I love the fact that it's not just an app saying that something is good or something is bad. It actually gives you different options for the foods that they deem bad, and it kind of creates an easier way to get lower calorie foods, foods with less additives, and just kind of keeping it a little bit cleaner than last time. That was a little Greg Doucette reference if you didn't catch that. Now, as far as negatives go, I do have to be honest, there's a couple of them that are a little bit concerning to me. And the first one would be the fact that something like this could create a little bit of orthorexia. You could end up becoming obsessed with the foods that you deem good versus the foods that you deem bad, right? And that could create some eating disorders that maybe you'd be better off without, right? And so I do think that that's something to keep into consideration. Everything is okay in moderation, right? You don't want to overdo drinking soda, but also cutting out Dr. Pepper Zero all the time is probably not realistic. Every now and then if I'm going out to eat, I'll have a diet soda. It's not a big deal. Now if I'm drinking it every single day, it can stack up and maybe it could create issues down the road. And of course there's definitely replacements that you can have like the Poppy or, you know, just sparkling water in general. Now, one major issue that I do have with this app is the fact that you can't scan protein powders. As far as I know, this app isn't sponsored by any type of, you know, food product or supplement company. So I don't think it's necessarily biased. I think they just have issues trying to grade things like protein powder. And, you know, to kind of back that thought, I did scan honey and they weren't able to give me a rating for honey as well, which is a little bit odd. Especially whenever you consider the fact that a lot of these protein powders aren't as efficacious as you would think they are. For example, if you look at a company like Ghost. This is not me taking shots. I've bought Ghost products plenty of times before, and honestly, it's one of the best whey proteins I've ever consumed from a taste perspective. However, there is a Prop 65 warning on the actual bottle itself. And if you have the Yuka app and you can scan different protein powders and determine what protein powders are actually good versus which ones are actually bad, that's game changing. Maybe they're working it, I don't know, but that's just my take on the actual app, and it's one of the biggest flaws in my opinion. Overall, I think the app is a ton of fun to use, and I recommend that everyone download it and just check it out. I'm not sponsored, there's no, you know, affiliation with me and Yuka, but I do think it actually provides a lot of really positive insights. However, I do think you should use it in moderation. If you find yourself having, you know, stomach issues or digestion problems, maybe that can help find different alternatives to foods that you're eating, that you're trying to cut out because of the digestion issues that you're dealing with. Anyways, that's going to be it for today's video. If you made it this far, let me know what you think of the app if you've tried it. I found it to be really fun, really cool, but I do think that there's some kinks to be worked out. Also, if you made it this far, I really do appreciate you. It means a lot to me that anybody's watching these videos, and I'm trying to keep growing this channel and hopefully providing you all content that you find interesting or even thought-provoking at times, and overall just entertaining. So with that said, I'm gonna go ahead and end the video here, but until next time, keep it together.